𝘺SIKHO. Today we are going to discuss the different kinds of drafting work that you will get in your internships. I will also share my experiences during my internships around 12 years back. And from what I understand, the experience as an intern is going to be largely similar for a lot of you. Right. So I'm going to share experiences from a tier one law firm internship that I had 10, 11, 12 years back. And I want to know, to keep this conversation relevant to where you are today, to your situation and context. I want to know that which college you're in, which year you're in. Have you performed any drafting work so far in internships? Have you had internships? Have you done internships earlier? Let me know all of that so that I understand a little more about your educational background and experience. Great, Harsh. You're reviewing an SSPA. Very good. Srishti Rungta, third year law student, haven't got any drafting work yet. Have you done any firm internship or any in-house internship? That is also a question you want to answer. Okay, you haven't done any drafting work, but I want to also know that did you intern and get drafting work, or did you not? You don't have drafting work because you didn't intern, or you didn't you interned but got no drafting work there. Okay, Srishti, firm internship virtually. So what kind of work did they share with you? It's very important for us to know, right? In a virtual setup, you would usually get a lot of writing, content writing work. You would get maybe some work to proofread documents. Yeah, research work you will get. Correct. Correct. Okay, Pramita, you interned and got drafting work. What kind of drafting work did you get? See, like you've had Harsh has shared that he got an SSPA to draft, which is damn good. Okay, but it doesn't matter whether you got what you got to draft. It doesn't matter. I just want to know. Okay. Okay, Samriddhi, you're first year student from Ramaya College of Law, not drafted. Okay, Shreya Singh, you drafted notices and affidavits, very good. Pramita, you drafted a loan agreement, very good. Okay, great. So that's nice to know. And Aarti, you drafted applications and affidavits. Okay, great. So I'm going to share a few experiences of mine with respect to corporate drafting work. Okay, that I had. Can you see my screen? Just let me know. And from there, we will take this forward as to how to get drafting work and how you can leave a mark. Okay. So my first experience of drafting work was in Mumbai in an internship in AZB and Partners. It was on their office was on the 23rd floor, right at the top of the building, overlooking Marine Drive and the whole Mumbai skyline. Okay, and looking into the vast sea. And we used to have to work late, right? So but on the other side of this, like, see, there's no construction, so you can actually see the sun go down, the different shades of the sky while you're working. And that really enabled us to work also much harder than it's otherwise possible. I felt like I was on the top of the world. At least, as an intern, I had the experience of the best, right? And now one of the first transactions I got was a syndicate loan agreement to review. There were many more documents to it. There was a pledge agreement with it. There was some security document. There was a domestic syndicate loan agreement. Then there was a foreign syndicate loan agreement. And there were many terms that I saw, which I couldn't figure out. There were terms like facility. There were terms like security trustee. And then there were various clauses which wrote down the duties of the security trustee, the times when you're supposed to take certain decisions. I really couldn't understand, why this transaction had to be so complex, right? Like, if you lend money to a friend, you know very clearly that, okay, this is the time I'm lending you for. You have to give it back to me at this point in time. Like or even a simple loan agreement. Okay. Like you have one bank lending to somebody. What do you want to know? You need to know the repayment dates. You need to know the interest, right? And that kind of does the deal. But why do you have to have like 100-page document with 7 other ancillary documents? Like, sometimes there are mortgage deeds, sometimes there are pledges, all of these, then various kinds of guarantees, hypothecation agreements. I was like, what is happening, and why is all of this in a different document? Why could they not write it in the same document? Then sometimes I would read investment contracts. At that time, I didn't understand a lot of the FEMA issues that were involved in the structuring of the transaction. And I didn't know what was going on at the back, because in the contract, I didn't see much directly written about the FEMA. there were share pledge agreements, there were promoter guarantees, there were holding company guarantees. I got a flavor of what the guarantee is about, but I did not know many things like, okay, what's the stamp duty on one of these, on each of these documents? How do you compute it? And if I read the documents, they were very long, they had many clauses, so I was not able to. I could probably understand like 20% or 15%. And so for me, you must understand, I was in NUJS top law school, and I'm still managing. I'm interning in the best law firm, one of the best law firms in the country, still grasping like 10-11% new stuff every day. Okay, so it's going to feel to me like I'm learning a lot. It's a great internship, right? But my question to myself was, am I really learning enough? Do I need to learn more? This kept going on in the back of my mind. I learned a lot of new aspects, but I couldn't learn enough to draft. These documents had very big clauses, long clauses, voluminous, and I couldn't use that kind of language. So, and sometimes I could only understand the concept broadly. Like I could understand the keyword, the name of the clause, the heading, but not much more. And seniors used to use these words, reps and warranties, a lot. They would use the words indemnities a lot. And I was like, what is the big deal about this? Okay. And it used to just beat me like, why is this the biggest thing in the contract? Okay. So in some transactions, then I later figured, and this was during my internship only, that they're using post-dated checks in certain transactions to prevent getting into the clutches of the local money lending act. Otherwise, there will be another set of regulations that the loan agreement will attract. Then I was also given some due diligence work in that same internship. We visited the office of a company in the suburbs in Mumbai, and it sounded really exciting. We were treated quite well, and we had to review a lot of documents. There's like a diligence room where documents are put in, and then we have to make a note of the issues that we find in the documents. So this was like my first job where I had to figure out, first internship work where I have to figure out the issues in a contract. Okay, and I had to read the agreements from scratch. And the senior gave me an example of what an issue is. Okay, but I was like, this is the first time I'm reading any contract. I don't know what is acceptable. I didn't know how to spot the issues. I didn't know what is acceptable. What I didn't know what is non-acceptable. I didn't know how much is allowed to pass. So in some cases where I found that a contract is valid, there I didn't write any observation. Okay, and then the senior would ask me next day that did this contract have a renewal clause or not? And I didn't remember. I made like a table of 10 columns, 10 variables in a lease agreement. And this was all corporate leases. Okay. So where I didn't spot a problem, I didn't write anything because I was instructed that if you find there's a problem, then you make an observation. So where there was no problem, I didn't make. And then my senior next day asked, "What is the problem? Do you know? Did this contract have a renewal clause? Was this clause there? Was this clause there?" They asked me a few questions, and I was like, "Now I don't remember." Right. So at that time I didn't know, because how should I review a contract even which is right? There also I have to make some kind of comment so that my senior, without reviewing the contract, knows what I did. Okay, and that was my first aha moment at that time. Right. And also the big struggle for me was, I don't know to what extent like I can allow something to pass, because it's the first time I'm seeing any agreement whatsoever. So while I was doing due diligence, actually I was doing one kind of contract review work inside the due diligence. In every due diligence transaction, you will review something called material contracts. Okay, sometimes you will also review IP registrations and licenses and things like that. There you will identify, you will be again using your contract review skills, even though you call the work to be a due diligence work. Okay. Then on another occasion, I was reading a shareholders agreement, and this was the first time here I read this word called tag along. Then I read a word called drag along, right of first offer, right of first refusal. And then people used to debate that how is a first offer clause different from a first refusal clause. And then while people gave a lot of insights on that, in reality I would see one type of clause which they always write, and it's a combination of the best of both worlds from the point of view of their client. Okay. So I felt that, this is very, very difficult to understand. And at that time, I was working on private equity transactions. So I'll explain. I realized this later. Okay. I didn't know this then, but I'll explain what happened in private equity. Basically, the company The investor is a private equity investor, and they're investing into a company which has had a lot of earlier stages of investment, usually from venture capitalists. Okay. Now, don't worry about more technicalities. What just happens is that, each set of investors in the line who have invested in the company may want one or more variations of the rights. It will be easy and simple if all the rights are with the private equity guy, but sometimes some of the venture capital investors will also take some protective rights for their money. Okay, so I got damn confused that why is this clause worded in such a complex way, and I couldn't figure out the meaning. Then if I read it 4 times, I figure out the meaning, but the clause has a jargonistic uh, term, and there are many jargonistic terms in each of these documents. It's there in shareholders agreements, it's there in another set of documents for loans, it is there in another transaction I did, which was for issuance of non-convertible debentures, listing of them on the stock exchange, the debt segment of the stock exchange, and then their private placement to specific institutional buyers. Okay, so now every time I'm finding new technical terms in every contract, so it's not generic. Okay, then what happens is every time I try to read a technical term, I find that there are 4 subclauses or 5 subclauses in one big clause. So by the time I understand the concept, then I go into the logistics part. Like logistics means who does what when. Okay, concept part is written in the beginning, and for some terms there is no concept explained. So that is basically coming from business parlance. Okay, then when they explain the clause, by the time I read the 4th or 5th subclause, because it's defining the rules for different parties to follow, I have forgotten what the first clause is. Okay, so this becomes very problematic for me in the internship. By that, okay, at first then I thought that, okay, I can't follow everything, so let me just hurry up with the proofreading work, right? Then I also thought, I tried to think that, okay, what is going to help me in the long term? Should I focus on reading? A lot of people are dropping out, guys. Stay on, this is going to be fun. So I thought that I should focus on my learning. Then I cannot just proofread and give it up. So this was an ethical dilemma that I was dealing with, that what does the firm want me to do, and versus what is in my long term interest. How many of you faced this when you got proofreading? Or how many of you felt, acha apne liye seekh lu, should I learn for myself, or should I do it for the firm? Should I do it faster, or should I do it slower and focus on my learning? Okay, how many of you expect that, acha, let the senior come and train me first, right? And how many of you have doubts and you do the work and you still have doubts and you want to ask the senior 10 more questions about how the deal went, right? All of that happens, right? So it was happening with me as well all the time. Okay, then I had this problem that, okay, another ethical problem. How can I check cross referencing and definitions if I did not know the meaning of different clauses of the contract? So what is cross referencing? So I'll tell you, when you're given proofreading work, what are the top tasks you have to do when you're giving proofreading work? A lot of you who've done drafting work, if you drafted a notice or an affidavit, that much you could have gotten. But most of the times for contracts, you get review or proofreading work. Okay. So in that case, what do you have to look for? Who can tell me what are the top few things that you have to look for when you're given proofreading work? Anybody wants to take a guess? You will look at like definitions clause. You will look at whether all defined terms are capitalized or not, whether every capitalized term is defined, whether every definition is there in the definition section and no definitions are randomly scattered, whether formatting is correct, whether punctuation is correct. Okay, uh, whether cross references to different clauses have the correct number. Okay, these are the few things that any senior wants you to do when they've given you proofreading work. Anything else you do for yourself or the firm is a bonus, and this is your window of opportunity to impress, right? Because you might do the job really well, but you've still done it as an intern. To be successful, to get your PPOs, to get callbacks, to get assessment internships. You know what a callback and assessment internships are, right? Yeah, annexure needs to be checked that it's attached or not. Ambiguity, Shreya, yes, but the senior may not expect you to do. But yeah, it's great if you can do that. It will be great if you can say, there should be a indemnity for this, or it will be great if you can say this representation doesn't make sense in this context. Okay, even things like this confidentiality clause seems to be for the wrong agreement, like it's worded in a very different way. Yeah, Vaibhav, what you're saying about no overlapping or cutting out the effect of one clause by giving effect to another clause, great. This is a value addition. Very good. Okay. And then repeat which one, Pramita? What Vaibhav is saying is to check that all the contract is consistent in the sense that one provision is not contradicting or reducing accidentally the implication of another clause. Okay. That is very important to check. Now, this means that I must understand the meaning of the clause. Even for ambiguity, it means that I must understand the meaning of the clause, right? Like there is a point where a right of first offer transitions, it lapses and then you are entitled to tag along. Okay, so how does that transition happen? You need to know, otherwise you will not be able to spot ambiguities. You will not be able to spot any gaps, right? Yes, Vaibhav, clauses should not be in opposition to any latest judgments or circulars. One classical example is in competition law, something called gun jumping. If something is not allowed by the competition commission or requires an approval or an information to be filed, and you execute an agreement before that, it's called gun jumping. Okay, and this is there for various other regulatory statutes also, and you know that anything illegal cannot be done, right? So under contract law also, that an illegal contract will not be valid and will not be enforced. Okay, so now my question was that out of this work that I had to do, my ethical dilemma came to, I got an answer that yes, I must understand everything for me to be able to do the proofreading work effectively. That means I have to spend more time to work on it. And that also means that giving the answer first is not the most important thing. But then the main problem, how do I understand everything? Because I was able to understand anywhere between 15 to 20% of any contract. Okay, so and my job was also this, how can I detect, this is very important, how do I detect an irrelevant clause or an inconsistent clause that has possibly come from a template? So the usual way in which a contract is finally drafted is there can be a mix and match of 3 or 4 templates, okay, for one contract, and then a lot of original writing. Okay, so that's how a contract usually comes together, and one transaction can have 5, 6, 7, 8 contracts. If you're lucky, it will have between 1 to 2 contracts. But if in any standard contract or in any standard transaction, you will have multiple contracts. So you have to ensure that they are tying into each other. Disputes resolution clauses are getting triggered for disputes arising out of any of them. All of that, you'll have to keep the sequence intact. But most important is, when this copy pasting has happened and the application of mind has happened by the associate, there must not have been a silly mistake being made where a wrong clause was copied. So an associate can check it. A trained associate who has 2 years of experience will check it very fast. Oh, that this is a stupid clause. How did you not spot this? But you as an intern, how will you spot that? Okay, when you've not seen these clauses, when you've not walked through the spaces of drafting such contracts, where you've not experienced it yourself, how will you spot it? Even if you have time, that is the question. Because what happens is, if your brain is not trained to see those gaps, you won't spot it. Okay, so I realized that I would have to work harder to understand the contract. Okay, then I was still missing things from time to time. I am getting into office at 11 a.m. That time one could enter by that time, and then leaving late night, 11 p.m., midnight, going after a lot of associates, after a lot of associates have gone home. Okay, and on one occasion, my senior called me a scamster, and I didn't understand why, because I was doing a lot of hard work. So somewhere in that period, I had basically become somebody who started to focus disproportionately more on understanding what I need to learn for my long term, and started to compromise on the quality of the proofreading. And that's where this happened. So I'm working hard and learning, but I had to deliver the proofreading output also. And there I was making some silly mistakes, which is where my senior associate thought that I am doing the work and then vanishing. Okay. He found some gaps and he thought that I should be expected to notice those mistakes. And this will always happen. People will expect you to catch things because they are so used to catching these mistakes. It doesn't matter that once when they were in law school, they didn't know anything. And you can ask them, they will say so. But if you go there as an intern, they will still expect you to perform. Okay. And so being labeled a scamster was a very, very dangerous reputation to have for me, for my future career prospects. So I got meticulous again to the next level. Again, hard work, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., 12 midnight, sometimes getting in early. Okay. And I wouldn't leave even though several associates had left. You could order dinner to stay back and work, and there was a budgetary limit. You could do that. So that was fine for me, and I would work. And I felt vindicated ultimately after 6 weeks when I got feedback from the same senior saying that the partner was very happy with my work. And I also met the partner. Now, today, that partner runs a very successful niche law firm. Okay. It's a boutique law firm. So he was very happy with my work, and I was so delighted. And I interned for 2 months again with the same team the next year. Okay. And so that was again a fabulous experience. Now, what happened was then, so I didn't apply for a job, but I was clearly told that if you apply here, you will get the job. And my dad also worked in the same firm. So I did not want to have any, like, I didn't want to use those referrals and all to get the job. So I decided not to apply to that firm. Okay. But it was fabulous as for my learning. Now, but the question is, what is the drafting work that you can get in law school as an intern? Right? So I want to share the other work that I did after my internship. I helped a friend in fifth year to raise investment, once from an Indian investor and then from foreign investors. This took what was expected of me to the next level. Because at one level, remember in the internship, the documents were big, they were complex, but I was only expected to read and understand them and proofread, of course, and point out a few holes. But here I had to write it. I thought having a template is all that is needed, but after the template, removing the irrelevant clauses, customizing the deal, it was a hell lot of work. I can't afford to make mistakes for a real deal which somebody is going to get money from, and that person couldn't afford, didn't want to pay like a corporate lawyer. It would have been out of his budget, and he wanted a friend to help. And this was really like difficult. And I realized that, if you draft a real contract of your own, you've seen a 300-page contract in the firm, but if I'm drafting a 40-50-page contract also, this is going to be hard for me. Okay. Then some of the initial drafting assignments I want to share with you that I did at Trilegal. Of course, there's client confidentiality and also I'm not going to disclose all those things. I'm going to give you a qualitative kind of understanding. So share purchase agreements for demat transfers, right? These were a new level of complexity. Share purchase agreement is not supposed to be a very complex agreement. But when we did it for a foreign client who was transferring demat securities, there were a few new technicalities. And to ensure all the logistics were in place, it was very challenging. Okay. And I didn't know the logistics because I hadn't had that training earlier. Who told me that, okay, I understand what a demat share is, but what happens? How does the transfer happen? I didn't know. Okay. There's an instruction which has to go to the depository and they have to record a change in the name of the beneficial owner and all of that. I didn't know all of that. So I couldn't put that in the agreement properly. Okay. I just knew it conceptually. Then I had to review a lot of like 150, 200-page private equity investments in projects deals. They used to define mathematical formulae in English language and then also put the formula in it. Very complex stuff. Okay. So this is like private equity in projects. Very, very complex. Hard to figure out the math and hard to understand the definition that they have written. Because one formula will have 3 technical terms which will be defined, and then they will ensure that the parent formula comes up. Okay, so whatever math you see gets additionally complex by defining certain revenues, putting additional English text over it. Logistics is mechanics. Every transaction has mechanics. What happens first? What happens next? If I promise to do something, how do you know that it's done? Do I have to send somebody a confirmation like that, Vaibhav? Okay. Then I had to prepare various documents for briefing senior advocates on contractual violations. And I must now, what do I need to know for this? I need to know litigation. I need to know how to draft the briefing note, what the senior advocate wants to hear. First briefing, I don't even know. Some of my seniors have done this work before, so they would know, but they won't tell me exactly what they're looking for because it's gotten into their subconscious intuitive understanding. So they have not articulated it. Okay, so I'm literally on my own on this. And I need to know what the client wants to know. Okay, and then I need to know the terms of the contract. And then I need to know how to compress it all in 2 pages. Otherwise, what will happen? I will get confused while speaking to my senior. My senior will throw it away, or if my senior goes to the senior advocate with that briefing, he will get blasted for not hitting the points effectively and wasting the senior's time, right? So I have to know all of these together, which requires me to know the contract related stuff. Okay, and I should have picked this up somewhere. Then the other work, this you will get in internships also. You may get it. You may get it. You will definitely get it as a young lawyer. You will have to draft observations and action points based on contract review. Like I gave you this example of all the lease documents that I reviewed. What happened there? I was putting all the data into a structured framework, right? Like I'm putting a table and putting all the important terms of the lease agreement there. But after the review, and lease agreements is just one set, you will be reviewing hundreds of other categories. You will be reviewing depending on the nature of the due diligence, but you usually review the material agreements, and in a comprehensive due diligence you will review a lot more of all the contracts. Okay, so you have to draft observations and action points. Observation means what you found out after the review. So you'll put in the tables, but the tables will now start to present the data as an aggregated format. Then you will also say that broadly this is the structure of the lease agreements, and then if there's a problem you will say these are the problems and these are the action points to rectify the problem. That okay, there should be agreed letters of renewal on this thing has expired, or this payment has to be charged, there is something pending. Like that you will have to make smart action points. Okay, your action points cannot scare away the investor a lot of times, because what happens is, as a lawyer, if you point out issues, you have the natural capacity to blow up the importance of something irrelevant and scare off the client. If you scare off the client with something that's irrelevant, it's your loss too, right? The client doesn't invest in the deal. If you're acting for the investor, the client doesn't invest in the deal, right? And obviously you also, because the deal was unsuccessful, you also don't get the work. So you have to understand the relative importance of things. Also, if you blow up the importance of issues to an Indian client, they will think that you're being a stupid lawyer. Okay, so those sensitivities have to be kept in mind. Okay, then the other work I did was pointing out high level issues at the pre-investment stage to a new investor, where the investor hadn't even started diligence but said that, just review the draw documents. And this was for all the corporate agreements. This time it was for corporate agreements. What are corporate agreements? Most of these are like, memorandum of association, articles of association, previous investment contracts from prior investors. A lot of these are filed with the MCA, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, under the Companies Act, so you can access these online. But after reviewing, pointing the high level issues out, again, now I understand, if I review something, I've learned how to make a table. If I understand how to write the observations and action points, then I've learned that. But now suddenly, what is this new high level issue thing, right? So a senior may understand it, but I didn't, and I got this wrong a lot of times. Like, I need to point out high level issues in half a page, and I will write 5 pages. And I would think all of these are high level issues. How do I get to decide with no experience what is high level or low level? Correct? So this used to happen very frequently. Okay, now let's look at this was from my experience. Now let's look at the most popular types of work that you will get in internships. In due diligence, you're actually reviewing a lot of times different contracts, right? And then you're drafting parts of the due diligence report. Those tables you make go into the due diligence report as annexures a lot of times. Or sometimes the data is taken from those tables and it's aggregated, and the associate prepares a new annexure. A lot of times you will be drafting, if you're lucky, some parts of the report yourself. You will draft the observations, you will draft the action points, and you will realize when you see the associate write and you see yourself write, you'll be like, my writing sounds so, not fluent, a little, it sounds stuck up, it sounds too technical, it sounds like I'm using too many words, but I have to say what's right because I'm a lawyer, can't say things inaccurately. But you see an associate's writing, it's got that smooth flow and polish. They are filtering out certain issues. And when you look at your own writing, you'll be like, how do I filter out this? How can I decide what's important or not? This happened a lot for me. Harsh, you will get a lot of prior drafts of due diligence reports. Okay, but the problem is that you will not be able to identify how to absorb it for your work. And that is where the challenge lies. Like, one of the things I drafted in trial legal was a steps chart. What are the steps to be taken for X transaction? Okay, and I have to keep in mind now not just the Companies Act process, but exactly what the uh, particular investor's position is in the company and what they seek to achieve. And then I have to prepare timelines. One set of timelines is from the Companies Act, another set of timelines is based on key I need certain information by the client to be done or some document to be filed, and my work starts after that. So I couldn't decide what kind of timelines to take. Do I take the maximum timeline, minimum timeline, approximate timeline? All of that was getting too complicated, and a lot of these documents had 20, 30, 50 steps. Okay, so and because I hadn't drafted these earlier, I couldn't just look at another document and do it. You understand, like, you can't really watch a well shot movie and direct a film like that, or produce a film like that. Why? Because you've seen it, but you've not gone through the spaces of doing it. You might know that a particular actor acts really well, or a cricketer plays really good cricket, but you can't just watch it and learn, right? Because you have to be facing that kind of bullying, you have to be acting in that kind of movie for that emotion to come out of you, and then you'll understand, acha, this person has to apply this like this. Okay, then looking up regulatory filings and pulling out disclosures that emanate from contracts. Okay, based on this you will draft emails. Sometimes the regulatory filings will involve some kind of contract, or there will be a resolution which refers to a contract. So it's not strict drafting work, but it connects to drafting skill. Okay, and a lot of time, and this kind of work has drafting skills embedded in it. Okay, because you'll read it and then you'll draft something next. Okay, it's not pure play contract drafting work. This is the closest, proofreading work is the closest you will get to proper contract drafting work. Okay, and here if you can add in a few comments, few high value inputs, that will really clinch the deal for you as far as your career is concerned. And you need to do it regularly with different types of contracts. You don't know which senior in which law firm is going to get which contract when. Okay, so there's a lot of uncertainty. One day you may get a license agreement, an IP license agreement. Another day you may get a shareholders agreement. Another day you may get a services agreement. Another day you may get a stock option plan. Another day you may get an articles of association. So it can go pretty wild. Okay, so proofreading work is the closest hint that yes, I am close to drafting. Preparing first drafts of various kinds of legal notices is another work where you will be doing real drafting. This can come your way. What are the kinds of legal notices? There are regular notices under various contracts. There could be arbitration notices, notices to commence arbitration. There could be notices to cure or rectify a contractual a breach under the contract that is written under the contract. 30 days notice must be given, and only a failing that, the dispute resolution proceedings will be initiated. You could have regular legal notices, sometimes to take like a consumer action. Okay, you could have responses to legal notices. You could have takedown notices under IP law and technology law. Okay, so various kinds of notices can be there. Some are statutory, some are purely contractual. Okay, you could have affidavits to draft. You could have various kinds of certificate formats to draft. There's something called like a CP satisfaction certificate, which basically is a list of all the conditions precedent and the fact that they've been completed, and you'll draft that these are the conditions. You'll prepare a checklist first, and then you'll draft a model certificate. You may get various kinds of resolutions to draft. So for major corporate transactions, you will get the resolution to draft. The company secretaries will give it to the corporate lawyers that give us the board resolution for this purpose. Okay, you will get a lot of document mapping work. What is document mapping? Connecting one clause to another. Like you will compare two documents and cross reference. You will map that, okay, this has the eviction clause here or the tag along clause here. Where does the other contract have it? Okay, so you will compare two documents and then make tables and cross reference the matching clauses. Case research or statutory research usually has no contract drafting skills involved unless there's a contract in respect of which there is a litigation. There you will have to understand how to connect different clauses, and if you've not read enough contracts, you don't understand deals well enough, you will struggle with it because you will go off in the wrong direction researching the wrong propositions. Then a lot of times this will happen. You will make notes to brief seniors. You will make first draft of advice or opinion. Okay, for this, law firms have different formats. Okay, but it's not about the format, it's about writing the argument and answering client queries in a particular way. Okay, so client queries are not like the query, like an issue that is framed by a court ka judge, right? In civil procedure court, the judge will frame issues on which he will decide a judgment. Your client's queries could be various. They look like issues, but they are like, do I have to do this, do I have to do that, will this be triggered, will this not be triggered? It will happen a lot. It will be very conversational, and it will require use of law. Like, you will have to apply your legal knowledge, and you will need to review the contract if there's any, and then you'll have to write it all down in the memo, putting it all together, and it can't look broken. People struggle with sequence, they struggle with flow, they struggle with bringing out issues that they've spotted, and they struggle with giving the final answer. Final answer would be in terms of yes, no, can't say. That clarity has to be there. Can't say because ABCD, this is what you should do next to get clarity, like that. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you again, which of the above, to just to check that you're with me, okay, which of the above categories of work, according to you, require you to utilize your drafting skills? And for those of you who've done internships, try to recall that if I had known some drafting skills, would my research have been sharper because I had to do certain case research for breach of some agreement, or some commercial suit had to be filed? And if I knew how to read this contract, it would have been better. Do you recall that? Do you recall any work that you did in your internships which required drafting skills to be used, which you were not aware of? Right? Like, you had to do something, you had to review rent agreements, you were doing due diligence, not thinking that it requires drafting knowledge. And actually, you had to know some contracts. Otherwise, you couldn't have done it. Do you all recall these? Yes, no, maybe. Why don't you let me know on chat? Say, yes, I recall, or say, no, I don't recall. Okay. So say yes or no, that will make sense. Yeah. Okay. So now one more thing. Drafting work is always considered by interns to be premium kind of work. Okay. And it's almost like, if I get this work, I'm lucky, this is high value. And sometimes we think that we deserve this kind of work. Okay. That we deserve drafting work. And that means that, the place is a good place to intern. But that's not the case. Okay. Wherever you go to, it will be your job to get the drafting work out and get it come to you from have it come to you from the seniors. How do you do that? So there are different at different points in time. Sometimes the firm will not have drafting work. What kind of drafting work they will not have? They may not have the contract drafting work, for example, or sometimes there may be very little petition drafting work. But notices, opinions, advice, emails, all of this will regularly happen. Okay, so you must try to get your hands on at least one of these categories of work. And if you can get contract drafting work, great. Always ask for proofreading work. Don't think it's below your dignity. Okay, always ask for proofreading work. Then every team will not give you contract drafting work, that you've understood. So if you are interested in contract drafting, then you will have to ask the seniors that, do we do contract drafting work in this firm? How frequent is this? Is there something I can help you with? Do you have something that's coming up which requires somebody to use contract drafting skills? By the way, seniors will not trust you also initially that you can perform contract drafting work, because it will be like a bolt from the blue. They'll compare you with the regular interns they have gotten, and they'll be like, these guys don't know how to draft, so how can I expect you to draft? Right? So they'll be like, you're just probably saying nonsense. Okay, or you're just trying to beat around the bush, or you're trying to sound like you're bragging. But you'll have to demonstrate that. You'll have to say to them that, I have done this work earlier, I've written these articles on these contracts, look, I understand these technical terms of these contracts, look, here are some of the drafts that I performed, or I helped a startup entrepreneur do this kind of contract. If you say all this, then they get curious. Okay, and you don't have to necessarily show your drafts, but you can talk to them that, okay, I helped this person structure an ESOP plan where this was there, I helped this person draft an LLP agreement, these were the important points. Then seniors get damn curious. And what happens is that a lot of times seniors like to hear the stories of what is happening in law schools and what you did. That is more exciting to them than by giving you gyan about your career. Okay, so you may if you have things and stories to bring to the table, they will be more interested in talking to you. Okay, so you can change this assumption in two ways. Ask for the work, show your track record, and tell stories of what you've done actually, if you have a track record. So what's the track record? Suppose you wrote 5 articles, or you drafted 3-4 contracts in a course that you did. Okay, you can say it in two ways. You can say, sir, see, I've written so many articles, so I know contract drafting work. Or you can say that I'll tell you about an incident when I had to do this assignment and I had to write on this kind of shareholders agreement. And I went to these 5 sites and I saw that, this is a big gap. And I was getting the volume of investment done, but I wasn't getting, how the commercials were structured. So this is what I went about. This is how I went about researching that. I found out that this is the key insight. Did you know this, by the way? You can ask them. And then you can say, at the end, I wrote this article, I shared it on LinkedIn, 100 people liked it. Okay. And one firm senior, I'm now in touch with 10 senior associates from different firms. Okay. And they'll be like, wow, that's quite cool. Show me the article. Then you show. This is actually selling skill, but you have to say it like that. Okay, so how many of you felt that this, what I just used, is a better way than the earlier way where I was saying that, sir, this is my article, please see it. I know the drafting work. Okay, if you found the second way better, then write second way better, or second way, second way, second way. If you found the first way as good, then say first way. Okay, so what did I do? What was different in the second way? I got the person hooked, right? And I told them something that will not require their brain to use a lot of intellect. They can just passively listen to a story and enjoy it, right? So I became like a narrator, an entertainer, you can call it sales. Whatever I did was just make it easy for the other person's brain, a busy brain, to process, right? Okay, so now drafting skills, what you should know, are hidden in various kinds of internship work, and you may not notice it, right? So I would say, I'm not saying that contract drafting is the only drafting. There is like opinion writing also is drafting, right? Sometimes you have to communicate something to clients in a formal email, that is drafting. Okay, petition making can be drafting too, right? And your due diligence review, all contract review work is involving drafting skills most of the times. Okay, you can look at capital markets work. There is so much drafting there. There are so many securities agreements that are there to be drafted. The prospectus has a review of so many different business contracts that you have to write to the prospective investors about. Okay, when you explain the business model of the company. So these things are hidden. So contract drafting skill is kind of like the basic thing, over and on top of which a lot of other skills sit. How to leave a mark now when you perform drafting work? Okay, what are the things to keep in mind? One, don't hurry. Speed is usually not the most important requirement. You will have this temptation, coming first in class, all this topping and all becomes overhyped sometimes, and we think that if we do the fastest, we are the smartest. But that's not the case. If you do it the best, the most, if you do it correctly, that is what seniors want. And usually they give interns work which is not on a deadline. Diligence, list making work, they want to progress fast, but otherwise a lot of proofreading is not on a killer deadline. So you will tend to do things a lot faster than is actually needed, and you may compromise on quality. Don't do that. You should not want to be the first person out there. You should want to do things correctly. Okay, and you can look at it in the market also. By the way, Apple is a very successful company, but they were not the first for a lot of things. They were always like, even for things like iPad and all, tablets were around for a long time in the market, but when Apple made it, they were successful. Phones were around from a long time, mobile phones, right? So they were not the first. Even MP3 players were there for a long time. They were not the first in that. So remember that you do it the best way. That's what's going to count. 4 important aspects that you should know are important for proofreading: definitions, clauses, punctuations, formatting, and cross-referencing. So for formatting, what happens? You need to spot, okay? You have to have a sharp eye for spotting gaps and spaces, gaps and indents. Indent means the space from the margin. And then you should also know how to use Microsoft Word properly. Cross-referencing, you must always check. This is a deal breaker. Clients will take an adverse judgment on the firm if cross-referencing is incorrect. You should look that the cross-referencing to the different paragraphs is correctly done. Okay, and one thing you should start learning directly is formatting on MS Word. Track which are the functions. I have listed some functions here. There are more detailed functions in our contract drafting course listed down, but I'll just tell you, track changes you must always know. Bullets, sub bullets, different kinds of numbering, indents, Format Painter. Format Painter is a thing that I learned only in the law firm. I did not know it before. It's really cool. It copies all the formatting from one document, one paragraph into another paragraph. Insertion of a table of contents, page numbers, breaking sections. This you would know from your moot court memorials if you've done. If not, learn it separately. Take a course on Microsoft Word or just Google Microsoft Word for this function. Microsoft has made very good support documents. Then updating page numbers in a table of contents, internal hyperlinking of the document at least. Yeah, like if you have to cross-reference different clauses, then you should be able to do that. Mail merge, find, replace. Yes, you should know these. Okay. Good Webber. Have enough practice of drafting and reading. This is where people fall short. You don't have enough practice of drafting and reading earlier drafts. So what will happen is you can't anticipate new situations. What will get you brownie points? One is doing good proofreading, but that's not enough for getting a callback. That's not enough for getting a assessment internship. Why? Because if you've been watching some of my earlier webinars, I always say, if you want a PPO, the law firm must feel that they have an associate with them, and if you go away after you graduate, then they are losing out. Okay, so that means that to be a free associate, you have to perform one level up, not the current level. So proofreading is what? Current level. When you start adding in value, like a trained associate does, that is one level up, and that makes them think that I want to hire this person as an intern. Okay, go prepared with knowledge of commercial intent across a wide range of industry sectors, because you will want to add value. You don't want to not understand like reps and warranties. You don't want to not understand statutory compliance aspects. What happens when you first learn corporate law and then you look at the contract is, in the conditions precedent, you will try to write every statutory condition to be met, and only after some time you will realize, after 2 or 3 drafts, that array this must not be uh, written like this. What if a new statute comes into picture? So I must only say 2 things: that all necessary statutory compliances are done with, a representation for that, and indemnity for any breaches, and a covenant or a promise in future that they will continue to comply with all applicable legal requirements. And that way you will address all the aspects of the issue. Okay. Srishti, is the drafting work given in competition law also? Yes, there are many form filings and petition filings that you have to file with Competition Commission. Sometimes if there's an appeal, you go to NCLAT. That's the, earlier it was COMPAT, Competition Appellate Tribunal. It now goes to NCLAT. Okay. And then there are statutory appeals and SLPs from decisions of the NCLAT. Okay. So go prepared with knowledge of commercial intent to add value. And what Webber you are saying, go prepared to read definitely one must read newspapers, but it's not enough. I used to read all the pink newspapers in third year, fourth year. I used to read those. Okay, Business Standard, Economic Times, business books. Okay, and trust me, I knew a lot about what's happening in the US than the Indian law firm associates in India. But that didn't help because I didn't know the actual clauses in the contract. So business books don't write about it so much. In a 500-page book, you will read about 3 or 4 legal insights that will be a takeaway. The rest of it will be worded like a thriller. You will learn about business players, so you can relate yourself. You can find passion for corporate law. But if you're talking about skill set doesn't improve. Okay, there's a difference between passion and skill set. Passion is what? Your interest, your drive for that particular subject, and skill set is what? Your competence to perform a task. Okay, so don't mix passion and skill set up. Okay, and what you're saying with newspapers, it will create some awareness and it may help in like holding your passion together, but it will not create the skill set. Okay, seniors will appreciate if you can comment and add value on how the representations and warranties, covenants, or indemnities clauses can be improved. If you've learned things well, you can also identify gaps in payments clauses, some mechanics. You may identify that this deal needs a anti-cloning provision, or a prohibition on reverse engineering, or a non-circumvention clause. There are various agreements which have these clauses. Basically, they say that what you can't achieve through this contract, don't do any backdoor work also to achieve this outcome. Okay, so you want those things to be pointed out. A lot of times you want to point out when people are separating their business that, one person, or when two people are starting business together, that one person will not transfer the business to another entity or start a new entity which does the same work. A lot of things are there, okay, and people tend to miss those things. If you add value there on the substantive clauses, seniors will be delighted. At least learn how to draft like NDAs, rent agreements, share purchase agreements, employment contracts, LLP agreements, articles of association of a company, services agreements. There are a few more agreements, but these are like bare minimum that you should learn before your next internship, literally. Okay. Rent agreements means rent agreement, leave and license, residential lease, commercial lease, all of that. Express your intention to your senior that you want to help them out with drafting work from the very beginning. Take feedback from them every week at the internship. See, when you say it on day one, you will not get it on day one or day two. Follow up on the third day. Sir, do you have any drafting work? Ma'am, do you have any drafting work? I've done the earlier work you gave me. And you can ask, ma'am, can I also have drafting work in addition to what you gave me? Take feedback from your senior every week at the internship and plan the feedback. So you help them plan it. You say that when will you be free? I'll come at this time for feedback. Okay. Which slide you want? The list of agreements. Okay, I would say go as broad as possible, but NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, rent agreements, share purchase agreements, shareholders and share subscription is very important. Loan agreement is very important, not written here. Employment contracts, LLP agreements, articles of association, services agreements. Okay. Service level agreements, they are different in technology space, but they're very important. Co-founders agreement, yes, Harsh. So there are a lot, okay, but I've given you like a bare minimum 4-5 that you should know. Okay, take feedback from your senior every week at the internship. So plan this, otherwise you will not get it. And don't sit expecting that my senior will give me a review. Okay, request them. Okay, this is very important. Request them to share client emails with you. They'll not share it on your personal ID. So firms have a way to give you intern IDs so that all the data stays within the system, but request them to share any client emails or access to knowledge management folders so that you can go through their regulatory updates. Also, you can see the client mail. Client mail is very important to understand what the client wants. While the senior may have briefed you, it is very good if you know exactly from the client's words and language, you will perceive a lot of things that the senior may not have briefed you about, and you will perceive a lot of that from the client email. Okay, so do that. Also, take permission from your senior to record the briefing that he or she is giving you on your phone. Earlier, we used to not do all of this because phones were not so advanced. Android became way more popular in around 2010-11. iPhone also wasn't popular then, and it was also unaffordable. But now all these devices are way more affordable, so you can try to record your senior's briefing with permission. Okay. Keep learning on the side during your internship. One of the biggest mistakes we make is that we say that we have exams, so no work on internships right now. We have internships, no work on learning right now. Okay, like life comes to a grinding halt when you have exams or internship. That cannot happen. If you work as an associate, you will not have your life coming to a halt ever. Okay, you will have lots of transactions, you will have personal life to take care of, you may be dating, maybe married, you may have things to attend to, family, travel, vacation, all of that. So make sure that you have the brain bandwidth and the mindset to take on more things. Especially keep learning on the side. So what used to happen for me was that I used to always struggle with I used to wish that my seniors sat me down and taught me stuff despite my doing the work, and sometimes I used to make a list of doubts also, but that didn't properly happen because I wanted more interaction. So I wanted a source of learning. This didn't happen while either at internship or while working in the firm as an associate. Why? Because that is unrealistic to expect. My expectation was unrealistic. Okay. Also, why should you keep learning on the side? Because this will make you perform better on your live assignments. You shouldn't waste your time focusing on the wrong things. There's a risk that if you don't have your learning in place, you will focus on the wrong tasks. And I wanted a resource that I could use, a learning resource that I could use even while I was an intern or an associate. I wish that partners and senior associates would teach me things. Okay, so I decided to research on my own, but it has a cost. Okay, I used to veer off into wrong directions. Like a lot of times I'm looking at tax issues when that is not even the client's briefing. Somebody I recommended for an in-house counsel's position, he successfully secured it, but used to veer off into IP issues in every contract, even when his senior did not consider it a priority. Why? Because IP is his area of passion. Okay, so this will happen. You will lose time on the wrong issues. So it's important for you to know what the client wants. If you work in house, still you need to know that. Why? Because you have a client. Your client is your company. Okay, if you don't know what kind of output is needed, you will get distracted and waste time. Okay, even if you discovered something really insightful, how does it matter? Client doesn't want it. Okay, like I found so many arbitration clauses in investment agreements, which, if the dispute arose, would be pathological. Like pathological clause is a term that the arbitration theorists have put in place to say that these clauses are going to be unworkable if a dispute arises and it's going to lead to ambiguity. Okay, now, but the issues that the investor wanted to know of was not that, right? Because I don't have an opportunity to amend and redraft the clause. When I'm drafting a fresh contract, I can do that. But in a dispute scenario, I have to work on the situation that is given to me, and there the contract is already frozen. So client outcomes are very important to take care of. Now, do you want to learn more about how to draft? So you've got a sense of, okay, this is the kind of drafting work that I get, this is the kind of other work to expect, this is where my drafting skills will help. Now, do you want to learn more about how to draft your first contract? Okay, I'll go step by step. I'll explain to you how to do it, and I'll do it in a free workshop. I've shared the link is there on screen. Asta is going to drop it on chat, so that you can also see it. Just hang on, I'm going to screen share again. Sorry, hang on, sharing the screen. Okay, did you get the link on chat? I'm going to share the screen and show you. Okay, hang on. Stay here. So this is a free session where you learn step by step how to perform a contract drafting assignment. And I'll just tell you what you will get, what you will learn. 3 hours. This is day after tomorrow. Okay. So this is the page. You can fill in your details here on the right and register. Okay. Let me explain. Okay. Now, why do we struggle with contract drafting? We've not learned it systematically in college. We learned Contract Act. We learned some case laws. Same thing happened with me. I read a lot of cases in contracts. I read like some paragraphs of Chitty, some paragraphs of ATIA on contract, all the nice commentaries, some parts of Mullah, but I didn't know how to draft the contracts. Okay. So, what will you learn now, and who is this for? It's for if you're a law student, a lot of your law students, young lawyers, people who want to build a career in a law firm, experienced litigators who struggle with contract drafting, or company secretaries or chartered accountants. Okay, if you want to generate additional revenue from contract drafting, is there anybody here who's a CA or a CS? What we will discuss is when should you start learning, what kind of work you can perform, is it feasible and realistic to perform work as a student? Okay, why will a potential client trust you? What are the loopholes that you should always spot? How to convince them that they should give you the work? How to demonstrate that you are generating value and that the client doesn't need to look for a free template? Okay, how to ensure your drafting is foolproof? Then, is there contract drafting work in small towns? If you live in a small town, is there contract drafting work there? What challenges will you face when you're working on your first mandate? What are the resources you need? What are the different levels of proficiency when you get contract drafting work? So how do you move from one level to the next? How to identify where you stand? Can you charge money? What are the principles to keep in mind while charging? What should you do after delivering your first assignment to get repeat work? If you want to work in a law firm, how can you use this skill? If you want to be a litigator, how can you use this skill? Okay, so this is the agenda. This is for day after tomorrow, and tomorrow we are having another free session, and I want to share the link with you for that as well. You can register. So guys, first you register for the one day after tomorrow. This is a detailed 3-hour workshop. Please register right away, I'd suggest. Okay, here's the link. Sorry, this is the link. LawSikho.com/draft commercial contract. Okay, register now. Top right hand side, very simple, easy to fill, very few details needed. Okay, so who all are registering? Who all are registering? Say registered. Okay. Now, tomorrow, there is another session. First, you all complete registering here, then I'll tell you for tomorrow. For tomorrow, also, you registered? No, tomorrow, you all don't have the link, I think. Okay. This is the link for tomorrow's session. Okay. 20 most common mistakes beginners make while drafting and reviewing contracts. Okay, this is tomorrow. Right, Asta, this is tomorrow, no? Yeah, this is tomorrow. Great. So I want to know now, before we close, what is it that you can, is there some learning that you have, because you want to identify, practice using the learning that you get. Okay, and if you want a certificate, you will be sharing something on LinkedIn and tagging me and Ramanuj. So I'd request that you first think, what was your learning today, what can you implement for your future internship applications, why is this important? If you write down what you've learned, it's going to help you in the future. Anonymous attendee, you can learn all this in the first year. All basic contracts, even advanced contracts, you can learn. So question is this, that if you don't write what you've learned, there is a risk that the learning evaporates, literally it vanishes. But when your brain thinks of what you learned, you express it, it becomes concrete. So let me know what you learned today, and then we'll close the session after this. Okay, so everybody, one by one, just say, okay, I learned X, I learned Y. This is what I'll keep in mind in my internship. This is what I'll keep in mind this year in law school. Like that, you can share. Okay. Also, this link is being dropped in the live chat and in the description on YouTube. See you, everybody. Keep sharing what you learned, and then you can head.